Hey, welcome to Car Guy Confessions, brought to you by ARP. I'm Jeff Smith. This is my car buddy Cam Benty and car builder Steve Strope, and we're going to tell you some stories.
There's no crying.
There's no crying
at the Grand National Roaster Show.
Well, I'm putting it. I'm challenging you guys to see if you can make me cry.
All right. Challenge accepted. All right. Welcome to another episode of Car Guy Confessions with Jeff Smith. I'm Jeff Smith. This is Cam Benty. Mr. Ganahl.
Bill.
Which
Ganahl.
you have to say Bill because there's more than one Ganahl.
That's
right.
true. That's
Yeah.
right. So I
Yep,
should be
Ganahl.
accurate. So we want to thank our sponsors at arp-bolts.com
Nice the pen.
and the Grand National Roaster Show people who
Yes.
are kind enough to put us here in the corner.
Right.
Because in the past we were in this little cubby hole and stuff, and it's noisier here, but there's the ambiance.
You know,
right?
you
Which
feel
and
that
it's-
this is a.
Feel the heat.
It's a visceral experience.
That's
There you go.
Yeah.
Write that down.
Nice.
Wait a
I
minute.
like that.
Write that
I
down.
like that. All right. So let's talk about.
How we know. How about we know? Pat?
Okay.
We should probably say that, and then
Yeah.
we should put Bill in his own
Because
prominence
we got
because he
two
has his
old
own
guys.
business.
How old are you?
I am 47.
Okay.
47.
Really?
I'm older than I look.
Yes,
I
very
think.
much so.
Okay.
Very much so. That's right.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. So, but you're with a couple of dinosaurs here,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
I would not put it that way.
I didn't really know your dad very well until I replaced him at Hot Rod. And I will tell you this, and it's the God's honest truth. I was a little bit concerned because I knew just a little bit about your dad, and I'm coming in as the new editor, and it's like, oh boy. So the very first day that was my official start at Hot Rod, I went in your dad's office and I said, let's go to lunch. At lunchtime, let's go to lunch because we need to talk. And what I told him was, look, I'm a Chevelle guy. I'm a muscle car guy. And the rest of the world, I'm a pro street guy. I said, I understand the hot rods. I love them. I think they're great. But everybody thinks, oh, this is the death of hot rod because now this editor is a street machine guy, right? He's a Carcraft magazine guy. He doesn't know anything about hot rods. I need you, pointing to your dad, I need you. I really do. And I think that played up to his ego a little bit, but that was not the intent. It was more like, no, I'm playing my cards on the table here.
Statement of fact,
Absolutely.
but it also maybe helped play up to his ego a little bit.
Yeah.
Those two things are not mutually exclusive.
It certainly didn't hurt.
So you also have to look at physical situation with Pat. Pat, how tall was Pat?
6'8".
Yeah,
6'8".
Yeah. I mean, it is prime.
In his prime.
Yeah, he got a
before
little
he
shorter.
shrunk a little bit. Yeah, don't we all? So he's 6'8",
So we
and
used to
his
call him
boss.
Too Tall Canal, right?
That's right. we used to
Yeah.
call- And his boss, John Diana,
Was
fully a foot shorter than him.
Right.
equally.
Easily. So he
yes.
had to be
Yeah.
5'7".
So there were some Freudian dynamics going on there.
Just walking them go down the-
big egos.
Yes.
Yikes.
Just walking him to go down the hall together was kind of this contrast in human evolution. So it was
At the Ganahl,
crazy.
at the Ganahl dinner table, every day that he would come home from work, I would guess that I heard John Diana's name almost
Used-
every day.
used in
I bet.
vain
not
mostly.
always spoken about in a positive manner.
Oh boy, yeah.
I have some John Diana stories too.
I
So,
will share one with you from what your dad, but we won't do this on the air.
Right.
I just can't. I'm sorry, I just can't. You know, it had nothing to do with about your dad. It was the situation where he wanted me to help him, and it was like, no, dude, we're literally going to commit political suicide here. There might be a murder.
Dad, you were gonna end up in a situation where he was gonna force you to commit political suicide,
Yeah, you bet.
and he didn't give a.
No, he did.
No, at
I
that
mean,
point,
can I guess on this?
it was really obvious to me.
Right.
He did not care. He was done.
Right.
And it was like, dude, you can't do this. And
He had the aerial view on everything, so he had a good perspective on what was happening, but he was a very strong personality, and he came from the strength of being an excellent writer.
Oh, absolutely.
and a
Yeah.
pretty terrific photographer too.
Mm-hmm.
So those were the two elements that make you at least able to write for a magazine of
Well,
the caliber of Hot Rods.
If I may, he also built cars.
Yeah.
Right.
His own cars.
Sure.
He-
So when he was talking about other people's cars,
He knew what he was talking about.
He knew what he was talking
and
about,
wrote
sure.
about it well.
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
And connected with people
Right,
because he wrote in such a accessible way.
right.
One last, and then we'll move on. We'll move to you. I guarantee we will. But it was like, I wasn't even on the magazine. He had the altered.
Yeah.
He had the altered.
Bob McRae is here actually.
Is he?
Just,
Oh, really?
he just gave me the Lowbuck Special shirt that he wore
Really?
when
Wow.
we were I was the 11-year-old pit crew for that car. It was the Lowbuck Special.
Nice.
And at what the readers don't understand is at that time, Peterson edict was you cannot race cars.
Yeah.
Correct.
You cannot do that.
Well,
I mean,
you
it
also
killed all
couldn't
kinds of
work on it.
programs that I was at Carcraft.
Right.
And I see this story, and he's got the altered, and he's standing there and he's 6'8", right? And so it's obvious who it is. And our driver is, and he had the bag over his head.
The bag over the head, and then the shirt said Floyd Lippincott
Floyd
the third.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it said,
Perfect.
"Just call me Floyd" on the back. And my dad's 6'8" with a bag over his head.
So everyone in the world knows who this
Exactly.
is.
He
And
had a
it
good
was
sense
your
of
dad.
humor.
Your dad
Exactly.
going, yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
Yep.
And then when I got the nod, it was like, okay, game on.
Well, he
game
knew what was
on.
going on. He knew what was going
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
Your qualifications, I went to Carcraft the same day you went to Hot Rod. It was just kind of this crazy shift. I went from popular hot rodding to Carcraft. So there was this major upheaval based on John's decision just to change gears.
Yeah.
Literally. Just change gears for highly personal reasons, I believe. I believe that was the case.
So wonderfully, you decided to be a car guy.
That's right.
Because your dad was heavily into that. And a lot of times what happens is like my son, he's into cars, but only
Yeah.
because I am,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And he does it kind of a nod to me.
Right.
And I'm into guns because he's into guns. He's full, and I just
Right.
like, yeah, what is this again?
Yeah.
Guns
You
and
know,
Ammo.
tune
Go
me
look
up
up
here.
Guns and
Tune me
Ammo
up.
page.
So what
whatever.
was that like growing up?
Well, I took it for granted.
Okay.
100%.
Okay. Well, most kids do.
well-
Most kids do.
Right.
Being in the environment that I was in and the people that my dad rubbed elbows with on a daily basis,
Great access.
I had no appreciation of it. The big names
For who
that
they
I
really
could
were.
go through
Yeah.
a list of
Sure.
that I just took. He interviewed Wally Parks in our living room, and I was just playing
Really?
in my room.
Yeah.
Yeah, that type of thing that I did not appreciate as a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
How could you?
Right.
Yeah, how could you?
And now looking back, it's like, woo, I was there.
I
you
feel
know?
very
Yeah.
lucky to have been there. I wish I was more cognizant of it at the
Uh-huh,
time.
sure.
But because of that, it's in my DNA. It's
Oh,
in
yeah.
and I took it for granted so much so that it never crossed my mind to build cars for a living, to go into the business. It was just part of my life, and I drove old cars, and worked on them, but didn't think of doing it for a living. I actually went to college, studied English literature,
Really?
and intended
Again,
to be
your dad's
Perfect.
influence with writing.
both my mom and my dad.
Okay. Yeah, your mom.
English majors.
Sure.
I don't even know that that's why I went into it, because they were not doing anything that had anything to do with it, besides the fact that my dad wrote.
Right.
But I was a high school teacher who said, "Wow, Bill, you really have a gift for writing."
Uh-huh.
So it was almost independent of anything, and my parents
Okay.
never pushed me in any direction.
Right.
Didn't encourage me to be a car person.
Okay.
Right.
But it was in my blood.
Sure.
I've never owned a new car. My first car was my dad's 60 Bug, and then a 50 Ford, which I drove daily for 15 years.
Wow.
Really?
I probably
Still with a flathead in it?
for part of the time until the flathead took a shit, and then I had to put another engine in it, and that took a shit, and then I put,
This is your high school car? Is that what you're saying?
high
Yeah.
school in all the way through working for Brizio's, I drove it daily.
Terrific.
Really?
It was my
Terrific.
daily
That's
drive.
great.
Drove it
That's
between
great.
LA and San Francisco probably 50 times.
Were there previous generations that were into automobiles or any of this kind of
In
stuff?
our family?
In your family.
Not a bit.
So
My dad was came into it of his own volition.
Got it.
He was a kid who grew up in Corona, Southern California, and just saw the older kids around him with these cool hot rods driving around, and then started buying the magazines, getting into model cars, but completely on his own,
Right.
with no influence whatsoever except for the people around him.
What'd your grandparents do, out of curiosity?
His dad was a mechanical engineer.
Okay.
Had no what a story my dad told often was that my grandfather, being an engineer, determined that water would work just as well as brake fluid and put water in his brakes and then crashed his car. So that's the influence my dad had in his life in the automotive realm.
That's
when
great.
When we
That's
spend all
great.
the time trying to get water out of our
The
brakes.
water out of the
With
brakes,
brake-
yeah.
So
Oh my God.
anyway, so I went to college and I got a master's degree. Like went to grad school
In English.
In English
in
literature?
English. Well, it's a long story that nobody's going to care about. I ended up studying a Spanish Argentinian author, but
Okay.
I had intended to maybe be a professor and write fiction or whatever, right, in an academic realm. And and I got a job working at Roy Brizio Street Rods when I started in the Bay Area at grad school.
Okay.
Just to have a better job than working at Starbucks.
Right.
And so I would work 2 days a week around my classes, and Roy had me driving the shop truck. But I drove a shoebox, and one of the first things he had me do was lower John Mumford's 50 Ford Coupe that he had just bought. And Billy, you've got a shoebox, go lower this thing.
Yeah.
So he let me work in the shop. I would have swept the floors and cleaned toilets if that's all he had me do.
Right.
Sure.
So I started doing that, and clearly he saw that I had an aptitude for it and encouraged me. I took welding classes at CSM, a different college, and metallurgy, and simultaneously as I was doing the literature thing. And by the time I finished my thesis, I had realized that I liked building cars way more than I liked dealing with college bullshit, bureaucracy and all that.
The Argentinian authors,
that's
crazy.
A good aside here. Well, I was going to Iowa State University to get my journalism degree. I was a psych minor, but same thing. I'm working while I'm going to school, so I'm working at the local Conoco station, and I'm walking to class one morning with my Conoco shirt on, and my jeans are greasy because I worked in the morning and then took my classes in the afternoon. And I'm walking to class, and my psych instructor comes walking up next to me. He says, I've noticed that you dress a little differently than the rest of the kids in the class. I said, yeah, that's because Daddy's not putting this ass through school. I am. Yeah. So I gotta work. So my fingernails are all greasy. And he goes, so you just pump gas? I said, oh no, we do brake work, exhaust, whatever. If your car's broke, we can fix it.
Right.
And he looks at me and he goes, oh, so you're a mechanic? And I said, yeah. I said, instant gratification occupation.
Yeah.
And I went, I'd never thought of that before, but you're absolutely right, because it comes in broken and it leaves fixed. So
that's
that same kind of concept.
That's right.
Yeah.
But you were able to fix cars by just making them feel better about themselves.
It's like the old joke. How many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? Well, the light bulb first has to want to change.
Exactly.
In this day and age.
So then you stayed with Brizio then? Is it for a little while?
Roy,
what was the introduction to Brizio? Was that through your dad kind of thing? Was it
yes,
or he knew of you because of what was going on? Yeah.
Only in that my dad, I was coming up to the Bay Area, and my dad said, if you want a better job than working at Starbucks, just maybe go ask Roy if he needs anybody.
Yeah.
And I don't know that Roy would have talked to me or thought that I would be a good fit for anything if I didn't say my dad's back and all.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, that sometimes hurts my chances of getting
Of course.
But I guess my dad was pretty friendly with Roy.
He was direct.
He was direct.
He was very direct.
I don't know.
He'd look at you and go, this is what we're doing, right? Okay.
So I'll quickly derail this whole conversation, but he passed away a couple years ago.
Right.
And we had a memorial for him.
He was racing at the time, was he
And
not?
your shirt
and at the
wore.
memorial, I wore a shirt that said, "Was my dad a dick to you?" Because I realized
I got told that story. I was like, that's so perfect. I wish I'd been there.
Well,
I live in Iowa now, so I couldn't come. But
so in inviting people to the memorial, I know
Talk about
everybody's
diffusing.
name, but
You're
I don't
diffusing
know
them all.
the relationships my dad had with
Yes.
everybody. So as I invited people, it was kind of like, if you don't want to come, I'm not going to be
offended.
upset. Yeah,
Right, exactly. Because I will know why.
And I wore the shirt because I just...
and that broke the ice with a lot of people.
Oh, my God. Diffused so
That's
many
great.
things.
That was really a good idea.
That's pretty smart.
It's an interesting endeavor to be in an industry that your dad has had such an effect on people in already. And every person that I meet, I wonder if they, I personally don't judge anybody based on what anyone else has told me about them.
Yeah.
If I met John Diana, I wouldn't have judged him based on what
He was a very personal guy when he wanted to be,
But
he was a barracuda in business, but
But I know that I get judged based on how you're packing all son.
But those people are very short-sighted. I wouldn't, you obviously, I'm sure. I
don't
see
take
how
it
you are.
personally,
I
but
can't imagine.
Yeah, but anyway, so back to the Brizio thing. I just enjoyed it, and the more that I could work there, Roy encouraged me. He let me
That's awesome.
start working on more and more projects, and
It's terrific.
I really got into doing sheet metal work, which he didn't do really much of in the
Okay,
shop. He
okay.
would send top chops out to different people to have done,
Right.
and I was the kid, just optimistic.
Let's dive in, right? Yeah.
Let me chop
Yeah.
a top, Roy. I can do it. And he let me.
See, and that's
Wow.
yeah. I remember Billy Godbold at Comp Cams told me this story. He says Scooter Brothers would let him do anything, but you got to understand that there are consequences to this.
You bet.
Well, the first car he allowed me to chop, and I did it with Jack Stratton.
Right. Somebody working with you.
Yeah.
And we chopped Jorge Zaragoza's 34, 33 three-window coupe,
Okay.
which at the time was when early Ford sheet metal was just
Very
worth
expensive.
more than its weight in gold.
Yeah, it was.
And I just cut the top off of a pristine 33 three-window coupe and was like, well, I guess we're going to have to figure out how to put it back on. But it turned out great. I'm sure Daryl Hollenbeck painted it. I'm sure he had a little bit of skim coating to do. To
Right.
Put it,
Well,
mildly.
your first shot, yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
No,
you
but I did have an aptitude for it that I didn't know I had before working for Roy. People think that I learned a lot from my dad. I didn't. My dad was very much, he went and worked in the garage, and I could go in and tinker, but he wasn't sitting there, Billy, come help me with it. I mean, it really wasn't much of that.
Yeah.
I absorbed it just vicariously without a lot of hands-on stuff. We worked on my shoebox together, and certain things, but he wasn't a teacher in that way.
Yeah.
So I really learned what I know from working at Brizzio's, both through Roy, but also the guys that work there.
And I think there's probably a lesson there, because a lot of people think, well, if I go to school, I can learn all this stuff, and it's like, no, you just got to do it. You just got to do it.
100%.
Hey, we'd like to thank our sponsor, ARP-bolts.com. We got a fantastic little backdrop here. They make an outstanding series of bolts, almost anything you would need for engines, chassis, things like that. In fact, we were at lunch today, and a guy asked you about the bolt on the back of your shirt, and and I said, well, it's really about a head bolt. They neck the stem down of the bolt on a short, small block Chevy head bolt, so the clamp load is even across 3 different head bolt lengths on a small block Chevy, and so that's the kind of technology that you get out of ARP. And we've all got stories on all that stuff.
Well, for a translation of what he said, call arpbolts.com.
But the message is that you can't get any better than that.
No, you cannot.
There you go.
Next.
We'd like to thank our friends at InTheGarageMedia.com. They have 3 fantastic magazines. They've got Classic Truck Performance, they have Modern Rotting, and my favorite, All Chevy Performance, with Nick, my buddy Nick,
Oh,
is
you're
the
so
editor.
biased.
So yes, of course. But it's a fantastic book. They're doing print media, which is of course our favorite. So
Tangible
color and
magazine.
everything.
in color and everything, and you can get your car on the cover of one of those books, which is
Right.
a fun
that's a
deal.
lot.
Great
Yeah.
tech.
Great
written
tech,
by
you
you
know,
and
not
others
always
that are
written by me, but
famous people.
Yeah.
Famous people
Not
have written all the
always
tech.
written by me.
That's right.
Just
So
pick it
check
up and
them
read
out
it.
at
Yes.
InTheGarageMedia.com, and they're our friends, and they will thank you. Because I remember, went to school, got a journalism degree, came to the magazine, and was like, right out of school, my first job, it was like, oh my, I'm just getting started here. The curve's like this.
But you pick up an eye for this stuff. I mean, if you're around at a bunch of stuff, nobody has to tell you, hey, look at this. This is what this is. There's certain things that I think you pick up just by the nature of saying, somebody says that's cool. Why is it cool? You pick it up, you analyze it, and then there are things you take away. My father went to Art Center, and he was a really good designer. And there are things that I see that I like, and I really credit him for having exposed me to those things, because otherwise, when he liked these cars, he liked this, he liked that. He was a sports car guy, but he liked certain, he liked second gen Camaro. All of a sudden, the second gen Camaro came out.
Yeah.
And he thought that was awesome, and I went, that's terrible. And now I love him. I love him because it just was that kind of thing.
So you transitioned from Roy's shop and then opened your own place?
Yeah, well, that also happened sort of by chance, or not with a lot of intention behind it. But
where's your shop again?
My shop now is in Hayward,
Hayward,
California.
Okay.
Yeah, Bay
That's where my
Area.
first car came from. Look at that.
Yeah.
65 Chevrolet.
So, and that, it's called South City Rod and Custom.
Okay.
I worked for Roy in South San Francisco, which is called, we refer to it as South City. And I I rented a space in the alleyway between Brizzio's and Sanderson Headers.
Okay.
And
good group.
had one spot really just to kind of work on my own stuff.
Right.
And then, we started renting 2 because we had friends
more room.
bringing stuff in. Hey,
Yeah.
can you fix this for me?
Right.
And then somebody brought in a car that they weren't going to pay Roy to build something, and they, Billy, can you do this kind of on the side? And oh shit, I can actually make money. And you think you're getting rich because you're charging $35 an hour and you're only making 25 at Roy's, and you have no clue
Right,
what
right.
you're getting yourself into.
Right.
You bet.
But yeah, I built the first 4 or 5 cars under the South City Rod and Custom moniker while I was still
what kind of
working for
cars?
Roy.
Hot rods or other things?
I started out liking custom cars. I mean, I've always liked hot rods as well, but I was more of a custom car guy. I bought my shoebox because I wanted a custom shoebox.
So what year was that? 55, 6?
The 50
Your
Ford. The
shoebox.
50 Ford, right?
50
The 50.
Ford.
54.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So Phil Linares was the first person who brought me a car to quote unquote build, and it was a Graham Hollywood, a 41 Graham Hollywood, which is one of the
Really?
ugliest cars on the face of the planet.
Yeah.
Make this pretty,
Wow.
right?
And it's a big challenge, but he was really the first person who I was like, oh man, I can sort of do this on my own. And to Roy's credit, he never batted an eye at me doing, and I was fully open with, hey Roy, I'm building this for Phil and blah blah blah. Oh Billy, that's cool.
Yeah.
And he saw it when I was done. Billy, that's about as good as a Graham Hollywood can look.
Wow.
Which is a huge compliment.
That is
I
a
think.
huge compliment. Very cool.
Yeah, but so
That's great.
we actually got kicked out of that space because John Mumford, who we've built many cars for at Brizzio's, and Roy's still building him cars
name
today,
is very familiar.
bought
Yeah.
that building to house part of his collection. He put his GM collection in there.
Okay.
And when I moved out of there, I was like, oh, I'll rent an actual space just for myself, and
Yeah.
moved to like 1,300 square feet, and I was
Yeah.
paying $1,300 a month.
Wow.
I was like, oh my God, what am I don't know if I can
Yeah.
afford this.
Scary stuff.
I had to move out of that and got 1,600 square feet, and it just kind of like moved,
Yeah.
grew, and I started getting guys who were bringing actually decent builds that they were saving money on because I was working for $50 an hour
Sure.
when Roy was charging $100.
Yeah.
Sure.
But they followed through, and I realized that I had a talent for not only building the car well, but getting people to finish the car, getting them to finish it.
That's
I'm
huge.
lucky that they did. Most
Yeah.
shops who are upstarting, it's so hard to finish a car.
Oh, you
Oh,
bet.
yeah.
So
yeah.
they're building it halfway through, and then the money runs out, and the car never really gets seen.
Yep.
I've just been super lucky. Roy was encouraging the whole time. He told me, Billy, whatever you do, don't open your own shop. If I have any
you do.
advice,
And then
That's pretty much almost
That's right.
whatever job that is like, no, don't do what we're doing.
Yeah,
Don't go do
exactly.
something else.
but he also said, if you're gonna do it, keep your door closed. Don't let people hang out.
Right.
If you're
You know,
gonna have
that's
Enormous
employees,
time
super.
wasters. Yeah.
Oh,
4
my
to
gosh.
5 employees is a good sweet spot.
Yeah.
More is maybe a little bit more money, but
Hard
so much
to
more
manage.
headache.
Oh boy.
So he was invaluable in
yeah, that's
me
really
being where I
good.
am today, and allowing me to.
That's great. That's great.
Still great friends. I just hung out with him and closed the bar down, last night. So,
Nice.
I'm
that-
very grateful.
Amazing how accurate that really is, because just the people who will just come in and stand there and look at you and keep you from doing things.
Yeah.
We have that problem in the office.
Oh, yeah.
When
Oh,
I started
yeah.
working at home, it was like, oh my God, look how much
Look at
more
all this extra
productive
time I have.
Because
Yeah, yeah.
the guys on the water cooler aren't talking to me or whatever they're doing.
It's a fun hangout for other people.
Exactly.
Like, I'm working.
I'm trying.
This is my
trying to
job.
get a job.
can't get it
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I cannot continue to entertain
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, do you face the situation where sometimes you have to refuse a job because you got a feeling this guy's not gonna be a good customer? Because I get that from some of the other builders that
Yeah.
you got to be careful with that.
Well, so you learn as you go. You said you studied psychology, which is very interesting. A lot of what we do involves a lot of psychology.
Oh yeah.
In terms of identifying personality types and how you work together with people,
You bet.
and also getting people to, steering the direction of the car to make it the way you want it to look.
Yeah.
When
yeah.
they have strong opinions that
Yeah.
don't necessarily coincide with yours.
Right.
But the the longer I've been in business, the better customers better, and I mean, really that means the more money they'll spend.
Right. And they work with you and they trust your
And
your
you hope that they're coming
your
to you
direction
because you've built
right?
a reputation and
Yes.
have developed a
Right.
style and aesthetic that
Yeah.
they're coming to you that they want. The best thing a customer can say to me is, Billy, just tell me how you would do this.
Yeah.
And that's what
They
you
trust
wanna
your
hear.
vision to it
Well, that
and then
helps.
follow through with it.
So, when you start out, you're taking in anybody who
Sure,
will come
anybody
through
who walks through the door.
because you're worried
Sure.
about having
Yeah,
a job to
stay
do
on-
tomorrow.
stay
Right,
alive.
right.
And you want to get to a place where you can say no to somebody who just you get a vibe that it might not be a great relationship, or it's
You
just
bet.
a style of a car that you don't think fits what you want to be putting out there. And
Yeah.
if you have the luxury to be able to do that, you're in a good place.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And I don't know that I'm like fully there, but I'm working towards it.
So if somebody's looking to build a car, what are the people that? What kind of cars are you building on a regular basis? I mean, are you building hot
Well,
rods? You're building
That
customs?
is a very, very good question. And what we brought to this show is perfectly indicative of where this whole
your specialty?
the whole scene of hot rodding. What is a hot rod? You
Okay.
came to hot rod, and it was transitioning very early on. We're really at the point now where the guys who are building early Fords because they had one in high school
Right.
are unfortunately that generation is going away.
Passing away. Yep.
And the guys who grew up with muscle cars in high school
Right.
and now have the money to build the
Right.
dream
Yeah,
That's
car.
what they want.
Building Camaros.
So
Yeah, right.
when the phones ring, most of the calls these days are for muscle cars or trucks.
Okay.
And we're very lucky that I have a reputation coming out of Brizzio's and then
Mm-hmm.
also doing historical restorations, both there and at my own shop, and doing a lot of early Fords.
Uh-huh.
We have some of those cars. So what we have at the show this year is it's a 33 Willys,
Uh-huh.
not
Okay.
a Ford, but a 30s hot
Yeah.
rod.
Yeah.
Familiar.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we have a 68 Dodge Charger on a Roadster Shop chassis.
Okay.
And it is the line that I have to ride. I would
Yeah.
love to be able to build early Fords for the rest of my life.
That would be your choice if you had
if I had to choose one.
right.
But I left Roy's.
But you don't have to.
I left Roy's partially because
Yeah.
it was Roy's shop. Roy let me give input on a lot of what I did, but Roy, rightfully so, the cars were his cars.
Sure.
His
Right.
name was on the building.
His
Sure,
vision.
he's gotta
He
protect
gave us
Yeah.
a lot. I mean, my name showed up in magazines, which a lot of builders wouldn't. Owners
no,
wouldn't
don't we
allow.
know?
Sure.
Yeah,
So I'm super
assemblers.
grateful for it, but I did want to build my own cars.
Yeah.
And I did want to have a bigger breadth of what I was willing to do. My dad did a symposium, a talk with like Robert Williams and a couple of builders back in the day.
Uh-huh.
Sure.
And one of the guys said, I don't care what the car looks like when I get it. If it has four wheels and I can lower it, it's going to look good. And I kind of have that
Okay.
mentality. So
Uh-huh.
you bring me something. The Graham Hollywood is a perfect example.
Yeah.
that's-
Give me a challenge.
There's
Yeah.
a challenge.
I'll-
Yeah. Oh man.
I might draw the line at a few makes and models, but I try to be open-minded, and I definitely have a style that I personally prefer, but
Mhm.
I look at anything as a challenge. We're going to get to the point where people are, I mean, they already are, building CRXs because
Uh-huh.
that's what they had in high school. And now
Right.
they're gonna
So
build
you're
Right.
actually building CRX?
We're not.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was
okay.
But I'm
gonna
just
say.
saying,
Yeah.
things
Would you do that if somebody really wanted you to do it?
Oh boy, I'd have
Yeah.
to be really worried about
I'm kind of with you.
where my next job is
I
coming
don't really
to.
think I want to do that.
I saw on Bring a Trailer a CRX went for $37,000,
Yeah.
and I was like,
It-
"What?"
there's some insanity going on out there.
Oh,
I
that's
don't know
completely
what's
crazy.
going on.
Completely
Well,
crazy.
but so one thing that my dad instilled in me is keeping an open mind about pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's a good way to
what
be.
those guys who are building the import cars, a lot of them are doing is exactly what early hot rodders
Sure.
were doing
Oh,
in
yeah.
the 30s.
Each
Absolutely.
generation did
Yeah.
a different
They're
thing.
getting cheap cars
Yes.
and doing some DIY stuff on,
Mhm.
on a budget.
Right.
Yeah.
There's an aftermarket now that didn't exist in the 30s and 40s, but grew, and they're buying aftermarket parts and personalizing their cars.
Mhm.
Right.
It's just a totally different car
Right.
than those
Yep.
guys were doing.
Right.
Yep.
But
Yep,
you have to
exactly.
appreciate
Oh yeah.
that
right.
that's
Oh, yeah.
the cycle, and that
And that's sometimes is difficult because in this industry, it's built of a bunch of niches, just like I said, when I started at Hot Rod, I'm a street machine guy, and we did, because Gray worked for me too. It's like, dude, just run with this. Do what you want to do.
Right.
I'm certainly not a custom car guy, but I understood, the value of that stuff. And just let him do what he wanted because I knew he had a handle on it.
Right, it's an important component of Hot Rod Magazine.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're not going to just do it because I personally don't like him.
Yeah.
I'm not going to. No, I'm not saying no.
It's here. We heard it here. He doesn't like hot rods.
Yeah,
I do.
That's how. That's how.
My friend Will Hansel has the budget beater thing. Invited me last summer to drive across country with him in a roadster. I'd never been across the street in a roadster.
Yeah.
And I drove cross country with him, and I thought at the.
Oh my God!
And then
you
you thought never again.
No.
I heard you
I
win.
thought. Oh yeah.
I
We
know
had a
you
great
win.
time. We ran out of gas 3 times. It overheated a dozen times because he forgot to put coolant in it.
Well, that'll do it.
Will, it's like, dude, what were you
What is he,
thinking?
Freiburger?
Huh? So anyway, long story short, he drops me off in Iowa at my house, and I figured, I was like four days in an open roadster, and it rained on us and it snowed on us and going through Texas, and it was like I thought at the end of this trip when he drops me off, I'm going to be just dead. I'm just going to be this puddle in the street, and they're going to sweep me up, take me and put me in the house and resurrect me. I was visibly upset when he left because I wanted to keep going.
Right.
It was so much fun.
Yeah.
No crying in this podcast.
It was really a lot of fun. I thought, this is something I've missed. I mean, where the hell was I? I'm driving my street machines. But so the passion is there.
You bet.
It's just, even though it's not necessarily always on display.
We're at a I mean, maybe we're always at a crossroads in some way, shape, or form, but I feel like we're at a big one right now because
Really? Okay.
the history. I mean, Hot Rod Magazine right now. John McGann, who I've gotten friendly with.
Yeah,
Sure.
We should interrupt for just a second and say, Hearst Publishing just bought Hot Rod Magazine.
Right.
So Crossroads, for the first time since EMAP, which was after Mr. Peterson sold it to the
Peterson
investors that I
LLC,
call them the pirates, then they sold it to EMAP, which was actually an English firm that was actually a publishing firm. After them, we were never owned again. The old Peterson was never owned by a publishing company. We were owned by a bunch of bean counters.
Right.
Well,
And
Prime
it
Video
just
with, like, on the back of your
drove
shirt.
the magazine
Yeah.
right into the ground. So we're going to get John on the show, and we're going to talk about that. So anyway, just to give them the information.
Well, so he's a very, he comes from a different discipline also.
Right.
And has, I feel like at my dad's memorial, he came up and we talked a little bit and I, had a couple of whiskeys and was, John, you gotta, people are forgetting where the history of this sport came from. And, Hot Rod Magazine is the Bible. It's one of the only ones still left around. And who knows how long it has.
Ooh, yeah.
You gotta tell these kids and these muscle car guys where this came from.
Yeah.
And not that I influenced him into doing it, but I really feel that he's making a good effort to mix some of that into the magazine.
I think he's. I don't know enough about the political situation there to know how much freedom he has or doesn't have.
I think
he put your car on the cover.
I think he has a lot of
and that
freedom.
was like when I got it, I had no idea about that car because I'm in Iowa now. I'm in a little cubbyhole, and I went. Okay. I don't know how I don't know how I feel about this.
Yeah.
I mean, and quite frankly, that very rarely happens. So then I thought, well, wait a minute, no. This is cool because this is going to start controversy,
and
right?
that is so to be a builder who my style is very. I try to go timeless, classic, classy, and subtle.
Yeah.
And Kobe Gewirtz, who owns the car, came to me with basically this concept of a cartoon on wheels that was going to have stripes on it. Is the opposite
at a diagonal
of my style.
Yeah.
Well, there's a long story to
That's
that.
very
too.
brave.
They weren't going to be diagonal to start with.
Okay.
That was my influence.
Okay.
But
because it adds action.
It does.
This is boring.
Right.
This adds action.
Well, we could talk about that car for an entire podcast. I thought you guys were probably going to start out with why the hell did you build that car? But, long story short, he built that car to shake things up because there's a stagnation in hot rodding. early Fords hot rodding. I mean, people who are into early Fords right now are purists.
Yes.
For the most part, they're
Yes.
building very traditional cars, which I love, but
Yeah.
it's the same car.
It's
over
the
and
same
over.
car.
There's
We used to get that when we were at it. You know, we'd shoot another red '69 Camaro, and you would say, you asked the classic question, "How'd you build the car?" Oh, on something different.
Yeah,
It's like,
Yeah.
right.
Not different.
Yeah.
And then they would
Not
pick out
different.
some little tiny insignificant. See, this is different than everybody
That's right.
else's. It's like,
It's got a
dude, it's
Chrysler
red
Pentastar
69
on the
Camaro.
fender.
Well,
So-
anyway.
so I went through with the process because I like Kobe and I like what he was trying to say. His intention with that car was to shake things up, make
Yeah.
a statement, make people talk.
Sure.
And when we first unveiled it here at the Grand National Roadster Show 2 years ago, John Gonzalez from Hop Up magazine, he videoed us pulling the cover off in the Grand National Roadster Show and posted it. And it was the first post on social media, besides one that I'd put on my Instagram just saying, I told you you'd hate it.
Yeah.
And it went ballistic with people just lambasting, like, just, that is the ugliest thing. Why? That painter should never paint again.
Yeah.
Just saying mean things about it.
Yeah. Sure.
Which we were expecting.
Sure.
So we brought barf bags to the show and laid them out in front of the car. And so
That's
anybody who
great.
came by and said,
That's
what the
great.
fuck did you do
Yeah.
this for? We'd give them a barf bag and say, there you go.
There you go.
Well, it draws them in. I mean, I'm telling
that's
you,
great.
It's very smart.
At that point, I thought, oh crap, I really might have ruined my
Gone
reputation
too far?
with this.
Yeah.
And we got really lucky that both the good guys, we went for Hot Rod of the Year, and they picked it for Hot Rod of the Year, which is a very
I
controversial.
did not know that. Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, so it won Hot Rod of the Year, which started a little bit of legitimization.
Okay.
And then John came up to me at the Grand National Roadster Show just after we unveiled it, and as these comments on social media were pouring in about how terrible the car was, and just said, Bill, can I photograph this car
Yeah.
for Hot Rod? And I was
Yeah.
like, 100%
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, no
Sure.
kidding.
And Wes Allison came and
Sure,
shot it in the
sure.
Bay Area, and I didn't know at the time that they were going to put it on the cover.
Okay. Oh,
Nice,
okay.
nice
yeah.
present. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, just so for it to be that car wouldn't have been my first choice to be the first car that I had on the cover of Hot
Okay.
Rod magazine. But in the grand scheme of things, it made such a big
Impact.
Well,
The
Oh, yeah.
important people are seeing it, and the
Yeah.
important people are taking off on it and validating what you're doing. I mean, we've got a situation here where, you know, you got that blue VW thing over there
Yeah.
that is causing a lot of waves over here, and that's good. You know, why do we want to do the same stuff
Yeah,
all the time?
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it's exciting to see all that happen.
Yeah.
You did something. You build trucks as well.
Yeah.
And you built a truck that was an award-winning here for for the Wombat,
The Wombat.
The Wombat. So,
which was coined by
I believe that I am the first person to
Really?
have said Wombat out loud. I said it to Kevin Doyle, who basically was in charge of
Sure.
is in charge of that show.
Yeah.
yeah.
And then I said it in front of Rob Fortier, who does classic
Sure.
truck
Sure.
magazine, and I'll pretend, at least in my own mind, that I think I was the first one to say it. But anyway,
Good
yeah.
enough.
So we put Greg Tidwell's 40 pickup, which
So
we
it's a
built.
40 pickup. Okay.
It's a 40.
Okay.
And
Ford.
40 Ford, yeah.
Okay.
We built that truck for Greg at kind of the same time and debuted it at sort of the same time as Kobe's Coupe. And Kobe's Coupe just, I mean, you wouldn't have known I built that truck because the Coupe was just getting so
Yeah.
much
So
negative
much-
and positive
yeah,
attention
yeah.
either way. And I thought, oh man, because the truck is one of my favorite cars that we've done. I just love that truck. It's kind of a anachronistic in a way. It's sort of 50s inspired and 60s inspired with color.
okay.
But
That's not easy to do.
no,
So can you have one example for each?
well, the color is sort of a bright 60s color.
Okay,
Nobody in the
all right.
50s, maybe in the late 50s. But,
Yeah.
and then the interior in it is very almost deco inspired.
Okay.
So we're playing with and consciously playing
Sure.
with these themes,
Right.
And
Which subconsciously creates tension, right?
especially with people who know what they're looking at and go, well, why'd you put
Why'd you
this
do that?
interior? And,
Yeah.
I mean, it should have
Right.
white tuck and roll if you're,
Exactly.
which I pitched to Greg and he wasn't a fan of. So
Okay,
we went with
okay.
something else.
Okay.
But anyway, so we brought the truck to the inaugural Grand National Truck Show.
Right, which
We're
was
friends with the
2 years ago. Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah.
We're friends with John Buck and Kevin Doyle, and they
Right.
asked us to come. I had a booth, and I had so many trucks. We had just finished like 4 trucks.
Okay.
Wow.
Had access to 5 or 6 of them, and I'm
Uh-huh.
like, I'll do a booth in the show because they wanted to make sure they're filling it with good stuff, and
Yeah.
appreciate that they would come to me for something like
Sure,
that.
yeah.
We didn't have room in the booth for all 4, so I said, "Oh, well, we'll just throw Greg's in for the Wombat for the World's Most Beautiful Truck Award,
Yeah.
just to put it in a spot."
And looky there.
And came in, and
Yeah.
I do some of the judges,
Uh-huh.
and I put my best foot forward.
Sure.
I'm not going to
Yeah,
go
well,
in and
of
just
course. Why not? Absolutely.
Yeah,
So,
it's like
made
back into
a
it,
build
right.
book and made it kind of a joke display. We cut stumps, and just set it up on tree stumps. Anybody who's taking any of this too seriously has
There
their
you
priorities
go.
wrong.
There you go. There you go.
But didn't really think we have a chance.
Uh-huh.
So and I'll say the reason I think that is that I'm trying to build reasonably priced cars,
Mm-hmm.
which is insane to say that means I'm trying to build $500,000 cars, while guys who are really going for these types of awards are spending $1 million to $6 million.
Yeah.
Like, so
6 million.
6 million.
I
Yeah,
won't
6
mention
million.
which cars cost.
We don't
$6
have to,
million,
but they're up there. Really,
100%.
that much?
Oh,
Wow.
yeah.
That's insane.
Yes.
I had no idea either.
If you're going for the Riddler, you have to spend over $1 million to even
Just be
compete.
considered. Yeah.
And I'm built. Kobe's car wasn't a high dollar car. It's really funny. You hear stuff through the grapevine, and somebody came and told me, "Oh yeah, somebody told me that Kobe's car cost $800,000 to build," and I just laugh. I'm like, "How did that game of telephone get to $800,000?"
That's how rumors get started.
Yeah, but Greg's pickup is very nice. We painted Campani color, painted that truck beautifully. The frame is all painted, but it's not a $1 million truck, and it's
Right.
not a show built truck.
Yeah.
Sure, it's built to drive. Went in and competed against some $1 million trucks, but apparently, and I credit them for this, that the title is World's Most Beautiful Truck.
Right.
And they really, I won't, if I'm going to brag about anything, it's that I think that truck's beautiful.
Right.
Yeah.
And they picked it to win. And we literally up on stage, when they do these awards, they have all the specialty awards.
Right.
And if you start winning specialty, the best undercarriage, best
Right.
display, you're
Okay,
not
I'm
going
not
to
going to
You're
win.
gonna be
Yeah,
on the big
exactly.
one.
Yeah.
And the truck I thought was going to win, also them and our truck both didn't get any specialty awards. And I
Okay.
thought, oh, they literally shafted us. We didn't even get best engine compartment or anything.
Yeah.
Whatever, it's a car show. I'll
Sure.
be fine.
Sure.
And then they said Greg's name for the winner, and I literally was flabbergasted. Just,
In a good
Well,
way.
that falls in the category of expectations. So it's like you're not truly really disappointed
Right.
because we didn't
Right.
really think.
I go in, I tell all of my customers, if you're building a car for an award, you're just going to be
You're
disappointed.
gonna be disappointed.
We're
Yep.
trying to
Yep.
build cars that are drivable,
Sure.
quote unquote affordable,
Yeah.
that can also hold their own
in a show
with
like
the big,
this.
with
Yeah,
the big boys.
absolutely. Yeah.
And we've been very
and I think in a lot of ways that's much more difficult, right?
Oh, you
because you're on a certain level because you're here. You're competing with them, but yet at monetary levels that just can't.
if I had
they
$2
just
million
can't
to
support.
build a car, I guarantee you it would be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
With that much money, you can build perfection. We're trying to make it look like
Right.
and we know all the dirty secrets. There's every car.
But for any of you out there with
and
$2 million,
I admire
to
that.
spend,
I admire that because I've tried to build a pretty car and it just can't happen. It just
Yeah.
sorry. I'm just gonna. I fall back and I'll make them fast.
I'll tell you what. I got a lot of opinions. If you let me just
Sure,
pull the string
absolutely.
and go.
Yeah.
Right.
But I also tell my customers who are building cars, if you don't win an award, if that's what you're here for the wrong reason.
You're doing it for the wrong reasons.
It's
Yes.
so political. The best car doesn't always win.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going on points, sometimes the ugliest car wins because it had the most modifications done to it and got
we
the most
talked
points.
about that
Right.
with Steve.
Right,
sometimes.
right.
AMBR for a while there. It's what I think the Riddler is. We joke. My dad and I used to walk in and say, "Well, that car is going to win. You pick the ugliest one."
Yeah.
But
Wow.
but the most memorable cars are not always anywhere near the nicest cars or
Right.
the best built cars.
Yeah.
I look back at something like Jake's tub, Jim Jacobs tub,
Right.
that he
Sure.
brought into a Good Guys show and brush painted
Brush
and
painted.
decoupaged
Yeah.
at the show, and
Yeah.
people were like, "What the hell
What are
is
you
that guy
doing?"
doing?"
Yeah.
Right.
And more people, at least of a certain age, or
Remember
era,
that car.
remember that car
Yep.
than
Right.
any AMBR winner between 1960
Right.
and
Sure.
70, or
Exactly.
70 and 80.
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know?
Wow.
And so much of it is just your own what you want. If you want it, then it's fine. It's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
There are no real rules. Everybody else is going to give you their opinion,
Yeah,
and you're going to have to
gonna
take
get
it,
plenty of
good or bad.
opinions. Yeah.
But ultimately, it's what you want to do, and you know,
Right.
and so
You're
there's a
paying
lot
the
of times
freight.
when I've seen cars where it's like, man, that's not what I would do, but
Right.
you know, I have to appreciate the workmanship that goes into
I
it.
got
There's an
told that-
enormous amount of work.
By so many people about Kobe's car.
Yeah.
Billy, I just don't get it. But man, that's really well done.
That's the thing I
It
ran
was just
into.
sort of like, I love you, but.
Well, I told Kobe when we were building the car, I said at one point, I just said, Kobe, if we're gonna make it ugly, and saying that endearingly,
Sure.
in a way he was trying to make a ugly a car that only a mother could love. You know, if that makes sense. But to shake things up, and I said, if we're going to build a car ugly, it has to be good ugly, not bad ugly,
Yeah.
and the craftsmanship has to be beyond reproach.
Uh-huh.
Because if you build a car that looks like that and it's shit, you know,
And,
not
and it
well
was
built,
thrown together.
Yeah.
Then
Oh,
you
then,
really-
then
you're
you're
gonna
really,
take it.
going to take it on the chin. Yes,
Well, it's like
yes,
it's
most
like
definitely.
lowriders. You know, I'm not a lowrider fan, but do I appreciate the amount
Oh,
of time
boy.
and execution
Oh,
and what
yeah.
some
they've
of
been-
the most
work
time
that-
you'll see in a car at any
Oh,
show.
my goodness. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I give them standing ovation for the effort
Absolutely.
there. And,
Absolutely.
But
You know?
yeah, that's one of the number one Peterson Museum. I work in the archive. I work at the archive.
Yep.
See your dad's stuff there all the time.
Yep.
Hey, look at that.
So what are you
It's a
working
patent.
on now?
Well, a lot.
Yeah.
We've got a lot
Yeah.
of cars. Obviously, if you took four trucks to the last one,
We're a small shop. You know, there's 6 of us in my shop,
so you
including
do have
myself.
6 people. Wow.
Wow.
And then Campani Color is right next door. Joe and I both
You
worked at
mentioned that.
Rizzio's. He started his own business, but we've always worked together, and we've always been. We were in the same shop actually when I moved to Hayward. Fortunately, the paint shop is in a different building now, and there's 3 of them over there.
Uh-huh.
You know, so to people don't understand what it takes to bring new cars consistently.
Oh, yeah. It's an
you know,
enormous amount of work.
Yeah, it's a huge amount of work,
Oh.
and I worked for Rizzio's,
Sure.
who has brought 6 or more cars, new cars, every year to this show, which people
That's
just
insane.
look
How
at it
does
and
that-
expect it now. But
Yeah.
the amount of coordination that
With
Roy's
just
a machine.
logistics, just the logistics alone.
100%.
I have trouble balancing one project because I'm waiting on parts. So now I'm sitting here waiting on parts.
Yeah.
Well, so, and that's to some extent my job
Mm-hmm.
as the owner of the shop. I hired Joe DiBattista to work at the shop to be an office shop manager so that I could go in and actually work on the cars
Yeah.
because I don't want to sit behind a desk.
Right.
I
Sure.
want to build the cars.
Right.
He's saved my life. I might have quit doing this if I couldn't actually put my hands on the cars.
That's cool. That's cool.
But all that said, we're planning. Speaking of John McGann,
Yeah.
we're trying to pace out what we're building so
Mm-hmm.
that we can bring at least one done new car every year to the
Yeah.
show.
Yeah.
We end up bringing a car in bare metal sometimes because we want to fill
Sure.
the booth.
I
People
think
love-
that I'm not sure when that really started, but I love that. You
I
see the
think
car
Troy
in
Ladd
process.
started it. He
Yeah?
brings bare metal
Okay.
cars more
Yeah.
often than he
Yeah.
brings finished cars.
Zane did that
Love it,
at
Troy.
Zane Cullen did that at
Yeah,
at
and
SEMA a
I think
couple
it's great
times.
to see the stuff in process.
So
you know?
people love it.
Yeah.
They
Oh,
almost
absolutely.
are more excited to see a car in bare metal than finished.
Yeah.
And so we have embraced that. It's fun to show off our craftsmanship.
Sure,
and
exactly.
It's really a look behind the curtain, the
Yeah.
scenes, and to see how things are built. I
Yeah.
mean, anybody can put Bondo over terrible work.
Right,
And sometimes things get done quickly, and when we get a chance to bring it in bare metal, it's a little bit of it is a dog and pony show.
Uh-huh.
Of course. Yeah.
But these days, no matter how nice the metalwork is, it's going to get skim coated with Bondo anyway.
It has to.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, but we're working on a 55 Chevy Nomad right now.
Okay.
That we may bring and put in the Salonica. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
May put in my booth. We're doing a 56 F100 for Tony Gerardo that we've been working on for a while.
Mm-hmm.
and we'll hopefully debut that here.
Okay.
If we
Nice.
don't make it to the truck show, we'll debut it here at the Grand National Roadster Show.
Sure.
We've got a 66 Chevelle we're working on.
Oh. What's involved with that? I happen to have a couple of them.
I just,
So
boy, did you hit the target on that
Oh,
one?
boy.
yeah. Did I say?
So we
You
have
know,
to ask.
You know
You
about
have to
Chevelle,
ask.
Chevelle Jeff?
Yeah, well, so it's a Roadster Shop. Sorry, that's an Art Morrison chassis.
Art Morrison
car,
chassis, okay.
Independent rear end.
Okay.
And we're like the Charger that we brought. We're trying to do something a little bit different than a lot of the people who are building muscle cars
Okay.
are doing. We're not doing 3D printed everything on the car.
Good.
We're trying to retain much more of the original car,
image of the car.
making the whole engine compartment like we did in the Charger by hand from sheet metal, no printed parts.
What's the engine?
In the Chevelle or the
Yes.
Charger?
In the
Chevelle.
Chevelle.
So Don Hardy built us an LS platform engine.
Okay.
Nice.
High horsepower. Don Hardy builds awesome engines.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
he does.
But it's built to look like a big block Chevy with dual quads on it.
Okay. Cool.
which is
excellent.
Trendy.
Yeah.
But I think it's a classy trend that's going to withstand the test of time more so than
Yes.
You bet.
It's kind of interesting now. People are almost to the point now where they're going back to small block Chevys just because another LS. They don't want to do
I
it.
hate LS engines.
Well, they're ugly.
They are the small block Chevy of today.
Yes,
they are.
So, and 30 years ago, everybody hated small block Chevys. I think it's really interesting that people are now going, well, I'd consider putting a small block Chevy back in. It's like,
Just
what?
that sine
You
wave
know,
of, yes. it's good, it's
exactly. It's
bad.
whatever everybody else is doing, you don't want to do.
Right.
So now I hear a lot of stuff, and you probably get this too, is like, give me an antique engine, or give
Yes.
me an inline Chevy
Yeah.
6.
Give me a sock
Or
motor.
give me a,
Yeah, I've
you
seen
know.
some sock motors in some cars.
There are a couple of sock motors
Yeah.
here, single overhead cam, big
Well,
block
so
Fords.
from a builder's perspective, the more esoteric the components, the less money you're going to make building the car.
Yeah.
Because you're dealing with something
That's-
is
Yeah.
not a 1-800 parts thing that you can
Right.
throw an intake from someone
Right.
on.
Right.
You're building custom headers, you're
Oh, you
building a
bet.
custom intake.
And so that concept fits back into your affordable part of it, because that's going to cost a lot more if you want
Right.
to do it that way.
You bet.
It
It's
is.
kind of like we brought up the car a couple years ago when Amber that Jack Tisno cast
Right.
his own cylinder heads.
Yeah.
Right.
Because we interviewed him before he won the Amber, and I was stunned. He goes, wait. Because he goes, well, we cast our own cylinder heads, then we did that. I'm like, wait, hang on a second, you did what?
blew right through that.
331 Emmy is like you cast your own cylinders.
Wow.
Well, they don't make them, they only make them in
right.
iron, and I want aluminum head. It's
Yep.
like,
That's right.
who does that? Right?
Machining could have worked too.
Yes, it's
but,
possible.
But you
Yes.
got the
But he
casting
decided-
them is a big flex.
You bet.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
So that fits back into your affordable part, because it's like, well, we're getting an LS because you won't spend $100,000 on an engine.
Although
right?
you can.
You could.
on
Oh,
LS as
absolutely
well.
could.
Whatever
I mean,
you like.
the funny part is that we buy the engine cheap and then spend another $50,000 hiding the fact that it's an LS engine by building your engine compartment and all your.
There's a lot of
valve covers
stuff.
and
It's like the
covers
drag racing thing was, we made a weight bar and we made it out of titanium.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
what?
Nice. What's the engine that's in the Charger now that I've...
So the Charger has a modern Hemi, a 6.4, which is a 392 Hemi, which is
Right.
kind of cool to
yeah,
say.
fits.
The
Yeah.
owner of that car has a 70 Dodge Dart, which is also here, that has that engine in it.
Same.
And he just loves the engine. So
Yeah.
he said, that's what I want
Yeah.
Nice.
in the Charger. And I'm fine with that.
Right.
For some reason, I'll put a Chevy and an early Ford any day. I don't
Mm-hmm.
care. I'm not a purist. But I couldn't put a non-Mopar engine in
Yeah,
a
that's
Mopar for
pretty
some
tough.
reason. That
That's
seems
pretty
weird.
tough.
That's where I draw the line.
Well, I
right.
think it probably has psychologically something to do with the fact that the Mopar makes people hunt you down and kill you.
They might. I do. I fear for my life.
There
making
they
the wrong
are.
decision on that
Tattoo
car.
their names on your neck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
Or just stomp on your
Yeah,
neck.
one or the other.
One of the two.
yeah. No. So it's a 6.4 Hemi, and I did build all of the engine compartment panels from scratch to make it look like a custom engine compartment, but I didn't want it to look like a 3D printed.
Right.
Came out of a
Yeah.
computer.
Yeah.
We like stuff to look like it was handmade.
Mm-hmm.
The level of perfection that people are achieving with some of these cars, they lose a lot of personality for me.
Yeah.
They're engineering marvels that I like to kind of look at for a little bit and say, wow, look at that billet piece that they made or that 3D printed valance. But I don't even remember the car.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
not
That's a
to
good
be judgmental about it. It's just not what I want to do.
But that says a lot.
Sure.
That says
Yeah.
a lot right there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, listen, we need to have you back on this show because I think we've just touched on a bunch of stuff here.
Yeah.
So, dude,
sorry if I have verbal diarrhea.
Is there anything with you that you'd like to mention about your shop
Yes,
or
yes.
place? I mean,
I mean,
what's the website?
South. It's a long one. It's South City Rod and Custom, all one word, and is spelled out. .com.
Okay.
We haven't updated the website for 10 years like most
Okay.
people because we're busy building cars, but there's a lot of what we've built on there, just not some of the new stuff.
I get it.
Yeah, to be in the position that I'm in this industry, especially after my dad is gone,
Right.
is really special to me. I don't take too seriously the awards or the accolades involving the cars. I just want to build good cars, and to be able to know and have become at least able to shake hands and say hi to some of my heroes
Sure.
who were my dad's friends.
How about that?
And be in this feels like I'm,
You bet.
my dad died suddenly, so I never
Right.
thought about what his carrying on his legacy.
The legacy.
Never even thought about it.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden
now it's like now it's real.
it's
Yeah.
real.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
so appreciative
Well,
to be able to do this and to be a part of this industry that he cared about so much.
Sure.
But
And to now care about it myself
Yeah.
and to be able to do it
Yeah.
for myself and for him.
And you have.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
it's very clear
absolutely.
in talking to you that
Yes.
you are your own guy. You're making your own path.
Oh no, I'm
Your
still
dad did-
just Pat Ganahl's son.
No, your dad
Everywhere I
did.
go.
Your dad did his thing. You are doing something completely different. And it sounds
Yeah.
like you're doing a beautiful job. So
I appreciate that. Thank
Yeah.
you very
Going.
much.
Well, thanks again for coming with us.
You bet.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me.
that's
We want to thank our sponsor, ARP-bolts.com, and of course the Grand National Roaster Show 75th anniversary. Thanks for coming.
Yep.
And if you like what we see here, keep watching, and we'll keep telling you stories.